firms evolving, right? We've talked about this. So the journey to the frontier from, so I read this whole thing because I have nothing better to do apparently, but I did. And it was so interesting to me because we've talked about this. How are these agents? Because a lot of people continue to talk about how AI is going to take our job, right? But really, the AI transformation, based on what I've read here and just what we've done, is not that. It is really how do we do more with the same people we have? How do we? Some of these things have made it a little more interesting because usually what we do is we have a whole organization based on what I'll consider as silos of knowledge. If you're an accounting person, you're in here, you're accounting and the CFO, you move up that way. If you're operations persons, you have your own organization structure. But the analogy they were drawing was if it's a movie, right, like a movie or a project, people from all over come in for that project. They all don't belong in one company. They just come in, okay, a photographer comes in, makeup artist comes in, the artists come in, they all come in, do their job, and then they split up, just waiting for the next project. So that's what they see the journey of the firm evolving into that. We already do in certain areas, but so to me that was very interesting. To me, like every employee right now, let's say use a co-pilot, you're using any LLM to answer questions. Hey, can you answer this email? Hey, can you make my, a lot of people use this, can you make my yearly review that I need to submit for my employee? Can you write it for me? Can you update my resume? So everybody is in phase one right now where a human is using this as an assistant. As you move to the next phase, you now have digital colleagues who all have very specific things they do, but you've given them directions, right? Hey, you do this, and then kind of put that in like a human in the loop. Basically human-led, but now the last phase is human-led. They set directions. The agent goes, does them, executes the business process workflow, and you check in as needed. So this is what I think, like, I'll just use Waymo as an example, right? You say, hey, somebody came in, you keep an eye on it, that is all doing right. But after that, you're not checking to make sure every ride that Waymo does is actually doing what it's supposed to. You just handle exceptions. So
absolutely. This makes so much sense. I mean, the phase 1, 2, and 3 graph, and I couldn't resist. I have to add a phase 4, the Matrix movie. Agents are running wild. Agents are running wild.
And humans are hiding. Got it. We might get there, but that's what everybody's afraid of. But I want to get to phase 3 where I can be a little bit more lazier. So let's see.
Oh, we are going to get there, guaranteed, right? Yeah, we are already coming out of phase 1, Rajni, and phase 2, like I said, with the tools that we are doing, we are trying to get to human agent team, right? Trying to pair up, put the human in the loop, try to get things perfected, and then let them do their stuff, which is phase 3. Absolutely. Agree with that.
Agree. And I think just some background, right? Everybody can go access this report about a frontier firm released by Microsoft. It's about 31,000 employees, but again, it is based on people who use Microsoft, which is a lot of enterprises, so it's really good. But one of the things that jumped out for me was, what are we uniquely capable of, right, as humans? So we have to understand that those things are going to be tough for any kind of intelligence to replace. Is creativity, judgment, and connection building, right? If you're looking at all this and saying, hey, where do I focus my energy? I think that's what I'm going to teach my kids to focus on, right? Focus on being the creative person. So because you are not going to, at this point, the AI is not going to come up with novel ways to do things, right? And then judgment, human judgment comes from so many different parameters. I don't know if you can ever recreate it. And then connection building, me being able to connect to you, me going to happy hour and have a drink with you. Can you really recreate that? The answer is no. As a salesperson, maybe remembering someone's birthday is different, but actually seeing eye to eye and talking, all that is where we should excel at. So anyway, that's one of the key takeaways for me. But we've talked about this. You can buy intelligence on tap, right? What I mean by that is almost, as you can see the survey results, 80% of the global workforce say they lack enough time or energy to do their work. And then 82% of leaders expect to use agents to meet demand for the workforce capability. So, this just the one right below that, this was very meaningful to me. If you go to the job, because now we've started going back to work, employees are interrupted every 2 minutes by meetings, emails, or ping, or somebody's tapping on your shoulder. 275 interruptions a day is what's average. 60% meetings are ad hoc versus scheduled. Anyway, the chats out of the 9 to 5 is gone. Everything's going up, being able to be available 24/7 because of the way companies are working. So, what does that mean? Are we going to be able to add more? Are we going to stretch our people to work 12-hour days? Or are we going to use the same resources we have, but provide agents or something else to make their life a lot more easier because you're going to take some of the administrative work that they're doing and hand it off to somebody else, right? That's what makes logical sense at this point. So, your thoughts on it?
So, Rajni, I think one of the things as you are highlighting some of this comes to mind is context switching, right? With humans, that's always when you say you're getting interrupted, that's essentially what it means, right? So you have to get out of one context and then settle into the next context, and in between time passes, right? And it's not very fast like a machine, and that's what causes disruption in the productivity in many cases, where getting from one thing to the next thing and getting settled there and then getting productive, and there's time lapse. And we talk about agents and context in many different ways. What's the context length, or how big can it process? But switching context is another thing that we don't talk about, because machines are able to switch it, like because you're giving another page of document and it immediately loads it and say, okay, I know what you're talking about, right? With humans, it's a different story, and it's a whole different thing for organic thought process. So I just wanted to highlight that, take the moment. And there are a lot of other factors. That's not the only factor, but I can immediately think about context switching when it comes to interruptions.
Agreed. So let's see how these agents will append the org chart. So that was interesting to me to be able to see that. I didn't even think about this, right? We have this dialing the human to agent ratio. It's reminding me of my kids to teachers ratio when we have kids. Or right now, a lot of companies are taking out middle management, so they are also focused on what is a manager span. I think it was 8 or 9, or they call it like a pizza slice. I think it's 8 people that each person can manage in Amazon. The companies are extending that now. Companies that I know are now saying, okay, we don't need this large layer middle management. Each manager now is going to manage like 15 to 20 people. So imagine just having one-on-ones and making sure people are, feel like they belong part of the team. It's almost impossible to do with that big of span. But that's really, I'm just drawing that parallel to that. So if you use too few agents per person, then you're underutilizing both the human and the agent. But if you get too much, it's going to confuse, because now you're dealing with a lot of employees per person that they have to manage. So is there an optimum balance, right? That was interesting because I never thought about, first of all, we're just starting where we're getting agents, but if we kind of let it run amok, we might have to have issues where people are just confused when they're working. So these are just like really future thinking about how do we manage these human ratio.
This is I have so many things to add here. Yeah, I'll let you finish. I have so many thoughts. This is one of the things, Rajni, I always thought about when we talked about very first time we started talking about jobs and tasks, right? When we talk about people in the first part of the way, where people are scared and like, oh, it's going to take away my job, and then it's not going to take away the job, but it might take away tasks, right? So in a sense, that aggregated bunch of tasks in certain way it is done is a job, right? And so when I see this, what is the optimal balance? It's a very tricky thing in my thought process, because there are, as a human doing a job, there are things that we like to do, and even though it could be trivial, that gives you the satisfaction, and there could be things that you don't ever want to do. It could be complicated, maybe it's not automatable. And how do you arrive at the balance where the job satisfaction exists, at the same time agents are able to do everything you want not to touch, right? That's I can think of it as the optimal, but whether you achieve that in every job profile, with keeping the human happy, keeping the agents efficient, we will know as time goes by, because I can see how as a human I might be crappy at something, but it gives me a lot of job satisfaction. I continue to do it, right? Well, what then?
True.
Right? So these are
Tell me
all
about
tricky
it.
questions. Yeah.
Uh-huh. No, I agree. These are, but I think, I want to touch the topic again about how companies were built on domain expertise, siloed into functions like finance, marketing, engineering, like that. But what if you can expertise because they need an expertise in demand. But what if it's replaced by a work chart? That's one of the core theses in this uh, report. Basically, it's an outcome-driven model, but teams form around goals, not functions, but powered by agents that expand employee scope and enable faster, more productive ways of working. Because one of the reasons for example, if you just put me in a meeting where we have to talk about how to build a plane, right? I have no context, but can I run teams? Yes. But if the agent brings the context, like you were talking about, it, they can come in and say, I'll provide all the blueprints that you need to build the plane, right?
Right.
So if that is how it's going to be, then do you really need an expertise in any specific industry, or you're just gonna be driven by, okay, at the end of the day, I'm gonna drive the people and the agents here for us to build the plane in a year, right? So it's an outcome driven rather than, hey, I'm the project manager, I'm gonna create all these task items. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I
Gotcha.
feel like
Gotcha.
that might be a great way to work.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
So, I think we talked about how a movie production, but now every agent becomes a employee boss, right? So, or raised to become an agent boss. But at the end of the day, a lot of the leaders in this are using more agents, regularly using AI, and they're trusting an agent for high stakes work, and they're using this on a daily basis as a thought partner, right? So versus people who are not quite ready for it. So I think these are some of the new jobs that will come up, right? We talked about this. We've talked about, okay, there's a big switch when the internet came where people who didn't even have these jobs have new roles. For example, e-commerce was not a thing. There's so many new jobs, or even I'm going to assume a lot of the software like web creation, all that was not a job before. So we were thinking about what are the top jobs that could actually be cost from this switch to AI. For example, AI trainers, data specialists, AI agent specialists, AI strategies in marketing, finance, customer support, and consulting. So imagine you build an expertise around this, so you know how to use AI agents in these different fields. So return on investment analyst. So these are like some of the new job roles that are popping up because AI agents bringing some of the expertise that we require humans to do. So to me, it is mind blowing where the market is going. And as a young student or even a person, mid-career person, if you don't make some moves right now, you might be in trouble 5 years from now. If you might be left behind. So there's something to consider.
I totally agree, Rajni. I think when we think about being a boss to an agent, I think I also think about, um, again, in this current day and age, it's probably mostly telling what you want in a clear, concise way so these things will respond back,
True.
aka prompt engineering or Googling or whatever you want to call it. But I think we are already stepping into the next zone where you are adjusting workflows to make sure that the agent, or you're putting some conditions around certain things. So you are in a very no code environment programming this thing to not just verbally stating, but you're also rewiring things, right? And in our organic process, we train people to do that over certain time, so they are getting rewired to do certain things certain way. Now we have these tooling, and you're instantly rewiring and checking whether this thing is working. And again, as we continue to evolve through the process, I think a lot of these skills, like you said, you have to be on board using all of this means to how to even train an agent, right? Like how to train a dragon type of thing.
Agreed.
How do you get the thing, and how do you control? How do you even control the output? How do you be the boss and get the expected outcome? A lot more tools
Yeah,
that
there
are
was
going to
a
be coming. Yeah.
yeah. My last thought. This is interesting because it brought it home for me. So I want to share that. Right. This is also from the article. I think is expert Daniel Susskind. His hypothesis is human work will persist even as AI capabilities expand because of these. We have to work in tandem with AI.